Welcome, everyone. I know you're accustomed to seeing our founder and fearless leader, Lisa Herrick, sitting here opening the monthly meetings with a grand welcome and words of inspiration that, for me, always feel like a lungful of fresh air. She is out of town today, so she couldn't be with us. She asked me to fill in for her. And I have to admit, I didn't jump at the opportunity because words of inspiration are not my forte, but I do have a message that I'd like to share with you all today. My name's Joanne Harris. I'm on the leadership team. This past week, I did quite a bit of reading. I finished 2 books of fiction. One of them was Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, which I highly recommend, and Napoli Ever After by Tricia Thomas. I read several articles, some of them by Eugene Robinson, Heather Cox Richardson. I read a piece by Langston Hughes. I also read an article on owls because I thought I spotted a snowy owl out back, and I thought it might be the one that's been lurking around Union Station. I caught up with friends and family. I cruised social media, and I watched a bit of TV, probably more than usual. And I have to say, through all of the prose, the poetry, the discourse, there is one word this past week that resonated with me: persevere. If any of you saw the moment this past week, when Supreme Court nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson was describing the difficulty that she had assimilating at Harvard University during her freshman year, then maybe that one word resonated with you as well. Because who among us hasn't had at least one person in their lives who gave them the push they needed at the exact moment they needed that push? When I joined 31st Street in 2017, I was fired up and ready to go. I didn't know where, I didn't know how, and I was really looking for answers. And I think that Lisa probably didn't know exactly where or how either, but she convened a group of us in her living room and formed 31st Street. And I have to say that 31st Street has given me the wisdom and the grace and the guidance that I was seeking. From the start, I was all in. I attended all the meetings. I learned the nitty-gritty of canvassing, which we just talked a bit about in the new members meeting. And I spent 4 election seasons knocking on doors and throughout Virginia and Pennsylvania. And I have to say to any of you out there who thought about canvassing but haven't done it, it is not scary and it is incredibly rewarding. So I hope you will consider trying it. I also phone banked. I wrote postcards and letters. I hosted postcard and letter writing parties. I co-hosted fundraisers, talk about stepping out of your comfort zone. And I have to say the results of doing all of that were rewarding. I mean, when I look back at the blue wave of 2017, that felt good. We almost flipped the Virginia House of Delegates. 2018, 31st Street raised over $1 million, which was huge. We achieved a 40-seat win in the US House. In 2019, we turned the entire Virginia legislature blue. In 2020, 31st Street raised almost $4 million, huge. And of course, we know what else happened in 2020, big wins. Come 2021, I was exhausted and tapped out. I think we all were. We had done a lot of work over those 4 years, and I think it was hard to imagine, like, what do we do now? You know, are we ready for a break? I was ready for a break, but at the same time, how could we stop when Virginia was in dire straits and we had midterms right around the corner? So anyhow, I looked around expecting to find comfort in kind of the tired faces around me. But instead, I found people like Jim Shelton, who's our strategist, who was doing double duty as political analyst and being canvasser extraordinaire. I looked at Mary Pence, who is our fundraising chair, and she was becoming proficient, tech proficient, and learning, becoming really good at Zoom so that she could improve the odds of canvassing and just do, I mean, not canvassing, fundraising, and just do an even better job than we had already done. I looked at Aaron Hamburger, our membership chair, who just kept our membership rolling along and greeted each new member with the same energy that he had always had. And then I looked at Michelle Heinbach, who was is our Virginia team leader, and she did an exceptional job of leading us through a really tough election process. So I saw all of these people who summoned the motivation, not just for themselves, but for all of us here too. And I just, I don't know where the strength came from, but somewhere they found the strength to go on. And in doing so, they showed me that perseverance is the hard work that we do after we're tired of doing the hard work that we already did. So I am asking all of you to persevere with me and with us. Anything that you can do, whether it is to give us your time, your energy, your money, all of that is critical to our success. So I hope you will join me. And now we're on to the program. So up next is Jim Shelton, who's going to give us his strategic update.
Okay, great, Leader Harris. And believe me, we see you also, and we get inspired by you. So thank you very much. Yeah, I'm the political analyst. I think almost everybody knows that, so I won't dwell on that. And I'll just jump to my screen because I got things I would like to share, some of which you will already know. Oops. But there, can people see that and hear me okay? Good.
Yes.
You can really hear me okay for sure?
Yes.
Okay, because I got a video later. I'm a little worried it may not be that loud, but hopefully it is. Okay, so let's just start at the very macro level, which is we got a lot of challenges. Let's be honest. Biden's approval is not good, although, as Mary was saying, he's really showing that he's a leader these days. He looks like everything a president should be doing. We have inflation, and people really feel it, unfortunately, and it's particularly the worst kind of thing, which is gas prices, which is everybody looks at every day almost. And we have a certain lack of enthusiasm among our folks. However, we do have some things that are moving in our direction potentially. This war, it's a horrible thing, but it's definitely bringing us together. And it's sort of bringing about also showing some stresses in our Republican opponents. And Biden is showing that real leadership now. Hopefully people will see that. And there is association that the Republicans have with Putin. They can't get away from it, much as they might try to. Inflation may well be mitigating. I kind of follow the economic and business news fairly closely, and people are starting to see that, including the rate of inflation coming down. There's some signs from Manchin that he's actually maybe ready to deal. We might get some good movement on some of these other key things that we're looking for that would help us and help the country. We do have the January 6th committee hearings coming up. Some folks might pay attention to it, hopefully. And then lastly, perverse as it is, if we get a negative decision on Roe versus Wade, that's frankly going to help us because that's going to be salient, I think, to a lot of voters. So as most of you know, I like to call it an investment approach of what we do to really work hard. I think to me, it's our stock and trade, which is to kind of get beyond the more superficial kinds of things and drill down. And so we look hard for strategic opportunities. We'd like to say zig when other people are zagging, exercise due diligence, and really, drill down deeper to find out where the good opportunities may be. Realizing the timing in the cycle is very, very important. And that's why this sort of theme we've had of infrastructure building, especially with the Democratic parties, has been so important. And we have now done 3 other states, I think, very successfully. And Martha Lanning from Spain is going to talk to us about what's been happening in those states. But our 4th state now is Georgia. And we do want to do this year-round organizing there. I think this is, in terms of pound for pound, dollar for dollar, that maybe the best investment that the set of investments that we've had. Just to remind people of our states, the teal colored ones have been our primary states that we're focusing on, guided by Senate races to a large extent, US Senate races, but also other things. But we're looking at these other key states as well, constantly alert to what's happening there. Now, in terms of the what that we want to do, we have a set of maybe, 9 or 10 things. And when I say we, it's me, but it's also our state teams and other people are looking for opportunities for these investments. And I don't want to dwell on all of them that much, but I'll talk about a few of them. The state party infrastructure thing, I think people understand that year-round organizing. There are also grassroots groups. The prototype has been, in a way, the Stacey Abrams set of organizations in Georgia, but there are ones like that in many states. And we are, in my view, destined to support a number of them in kind of the next phase once we've done the state party organizing. Canvassing is in our DNA, as people like to say these days. And we are, I think, going to be doing that. But also, a few of us are working very hard on a new canvassing video, which I think is going to be really, really good. I hope it is. And I'm thinking that it's going to be something that's really good for training not only our own people, that a lot of other groups will find very, very useful, because that sort of thing just doesn't exist. We have our relationship with Working America, which is deep canvassing, but also letter writing and phoning. And Michelle's going to be talking about that. That's getting off the ground. We're looking at some voter registration opportunities in Pennsylvania specifically, and going to do kind of a test case in early April. Looks like in York, Pennsylvania, for some voter registration. We're constantly looking for communication and messaging opportunities, building on the digital work in a way that we did last few years. Although, as yet, we haven't really found a great opportunity there other than canvassing. But I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit, because I think it'll be interesting for some of you to do a little bit of a deep dive into communication and messaging. Then, again, in our DNA is looking for candidates to support. And while in general, we don't think it makes a lot of sense to support the top of ticket candidates, we are always going to be looking for that. Right now, we're in primary season for virtually everywhere, but the North Carolina team feels like, for example, that the judicial candidates, the people running for state Supreme Court that have been so important in North Carolina, we're gonna take a deep dive and look to see if there's something there, because those judicial candidates may need some support. Okay. And as I said, we really don't think the top tier races are really much of a problem in terms of money. So now I do want to just, if you'll indulge me, talk a little bit about messaging, because, hey, everybody agrees the Democrats don't message very well, right? What's our message? All this kind of thing. Well, I want to talk about that a little bit. And first of all, to say that we're getting better. But part of it is that And one of my criticisms, I think we've been too complicated and too nice in many cases. But I think they are getting better. But one thing to recognize is that there really is no single message. I like to compare it to four-dimensional chess. That there are all these kinds of different kind of situations. What issue you're looking at, who the target audiences are, where you are in the cycle, what medium you're going to be using, and so forth. And I mean, this isn't all of it, but just so people get it, that if I'm talking to a lower propensity, so-called high potential voter, it's a different message than if I'm trying to persuade a lean Republican at the door. It's a different sort of kind of thing, even though I'm trying to find common ground with both of them. But in addition, there's the messaging, what I'll call technique. And I will say that having looked at this, partly because it's so interesting and so important to me, I will say that, first of all, there's a lot to it, not surprisingly, but there's also a lot of good people working on it. And I think we're getting better at it. And these are just some of the things that go into trying to do the technique of doing messaging to voters, to try to persuade them to come out and vote for us. So again, I wish I had time to sort of talk about each and one of these things. And maybe if somebody has a question in the Q&A, we can talk about that. But just to say that this is the kind of deep dive thinking that I like to think that we do when we're trying to figure out where we're making investments. Now, having said that there's no overall message, I'm going to say that there's one that I think this set of messages that I think is actually very, very salient for us. And that's, I'm going to use the word economic populism. So I hope that's not too wonky of a term or too elite of a term, but I think it does kind of describe the kind of things that I'm talking about. And basically, yes, if you heard me before, it's about the greedy super rich and it's about the greedy corporations and so forth. But this term, I think, actually has some resonance. I don't know, we'll see. And who do you suppose these people are? Do you know who each one of these people are? They're the robin bearers, I see Mary saying to herself. I wonder if you know who this one is, Mary. Anyway. I think that's Cornelius Vanderbilt. I'm not actually sure. Anyway, we got our own. But the fact is that at the turn of the 19th century into the 20th century, all this sort of same thing was going on. And there's books written on this. And I'm not saying exactly the same, but that populist argument, in my view, is still a very strong one for working class people, for rural people, and a lot of folks. So we like to be evidence-based, and it's not just because I think it's important or because it happened, over 100 years ago. But I'm just going to show you some survey data. This is actually from last summer, but if you look at the bottom thing here, in general, you support raising taxes on wealthy and big corporations. Even in sort of swing districts, slightly leaning Republican, the net support for that's 25%. Shifting even today to oil prices, interestingly, people are very receptive to the idea that it's price gouging by the oil companies that's actually behind all that. Of course, it isn't that at all, but people are very receptive to that point. So that comes out number one in terms of what people would like to do in terms of dealing with the current gas price problem. And lo and behold, and this is from last week, very current kinds of data, very highly supportive of a windfall price tax on big oil in the face of record prices. And I'm sure many people saw today that Biden is proposing some kind of income tax on very high earners. So it's hopefully coming together. Last point is that it actually links with Putin. It links with the war. So you can blame Putin and you can blame the oil companies at the same time, and you can blame the Republicans. And this is the kind of thing that is starting to come together, hopefully, in my view. So thank you for indulging me to kind of digress a bit on all that. And there they are. I mean, can you, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? I mean, come on. There they are, the buddies. Okay, so one of the things that's happened is that in terms of what I see as this getting better with it is that for a long time I felt like we were too nice, but I'm seeing emerge a lot something called a messaging sandwich, if you will, which is the 3 V's. Value, where you start with something to the audience that they can relate to, and then a villain. It doesn't always work this way, but this formula of contrast, and then the vision of what the good guys want to do and what you want and that sort of thing. So I'm actually good. I looked around for something that I could play. I have an example which is pretty good. It's not perfect, but I thought I would just play it for you just to have something a little different to look at besides me talking. So I hope you can hear this.
Grandma loves feeding us, but a new law in Georgia says if you bring her a snack while she's in line to vote, it's a crime. And she could be waiting a while because anti-American politicians are shutting polling places because they want to rig who gets to vote. Don't let them stop you from feeding Grandma. Stand up for everyone's freedom to vote and eat.
Okay, so you see there's the value of eating and voting. I'd prefer if it weren't cookies, I prefer it was something more healthy, but nevertheless, it's sort of, I know Aaron likes cookies. So it's anyway, it's the kind of example that I think, and they're good, the villains, they're actually pointing at the villains in this, which I like. All right, now shifting to Georgia, which is what we're going to be talking about for most of the rest of the time. Now, this is sort of the basics I think everybody knows, but I'll just put it up here. We have Raphael Warnock, we have Stacey Abrams, we have House seats, we have down ballot races, and we want to prep for 2024. And our partner SPAN saw an opportunity looking into the workings of the Democratic Party that our help would help there. And just a little bit about what's going on in Georgia. I don't claim to be as expert as many other people, but we are behind in the polls so far, but within the margin of error for both of these two races. So again, that puts us in the sweet spot, right? If we were way ahead, it wouldn't necessarily be where we want to be. But both Warnock and Abrams are very good campaigners. Abrams did really well last time around, of course. Perdue and Kemp are feuding very hotly. And you may know that Trump is feeding. He doesn't like Kemp. And so he's supporting the underdog, Perdue. And so they're kind of like tearing each other apart a bit. They had one of those Trump sessions yesterday, one not well attended, where Trump was going after Kemp. And then Herschel Walker, who's running for Senate, he is up in the polls and he's well known being an athlete. But my sense is he's not a really very good candidate. So we'll see how that turns out. You never know. On the other hand, I would say the Democrats have momentum. And what is that momentum? Okay, well, we have these wins in 2020 and the runoff, which was early 2021. That shows that, we can win, and that's motivating. Secondly, in the elections that were just happened in 2021, the Democrats flipped 41 local races in cities, basically, across the state of Georgia. Republicans flipped 6. So that shows that people are activated in those municipal areas where they haven't been before. And then this year, our friends in the Democratic Party and also on the grassroots side have been very active in recruiting Democratic candidates. So we have an unprecedented in recent times high number of Democratic candidates running across the state for legislature and other races. And as we know, that's very helpful for what we like to call the power up dynamic. And then, the demographic shift continues. There's more young people, there's more people moving into Georgia, and the robust organizing that especially the Stacey Abrams et al. Had been doing has been continuing. But that's one reason we want to complement that with more organizing also on the Democratic side. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time this guy. I show this almost every time I speak, but we do have this organizing model that Martha originated in Wisconsin, the neighbor model, where you have people at the top, you have these regional organizing directors. And the real secret sauce also is to find local volunteers, of which there are many in any state, and find leaders and help them organize, train them, support them, and so forth. And I will be honest that we're behind the curve in Georgia, because Georgia has been doing other organizing in other parts of its structure, but has not had the resources up to now to do much of this. So we're just on the start of this, and it'd be better if we'd been able to start earlier, but it's still much better to be doing this. And our aim is to support 3 of these regional organizers. Now I'm showing you now this stool because Martha, it's one of her favorite metaphors, which is that for these races, we need 3 legs. And the 3 legs on the one hand are the candidates and the races, that's one leg. The second leg is the organized grassroots groups and other things, the C3s, C4s, the unions, all that sort of thing. Well, we also need a strong Democratic Party because it has advantages of existing structure, and it can work directly with the campaigns, whereas the C3s and C4s are not able to do that. Okay, and so here's what we've done so far. So, and this is you guys when I say we, and it's so great that people have come together to do this, and it started last year, of course. But if you add up what we've already done in the other 3 states plus Georgia, it's $750,000. And SPAN has matched that and sometimes overmatched that in some of these states. We're still hoping that we'll get some match for Georgia. When all is said and done, this is going to be close to $2 million, which is support for these 4 states. And it's just terrific. And thank you so very much for doing that. And speaking of that, we're hoping that you'll help us today, specifically with the Georgia part. And we're going to put the donation link in the chat. And hopefully some folks will provide some donation, and we'll hear from Martha about what we've done already in the other states. And from Justin Pitts, who's the Director of Primary Affairs for Georgia, for the Georgia Party, about what it means for them to do this, get this kind of support. So that's what we're looking for. Okay. A word about Pennsylvania, just because we don't neglect this other keystone state. Just showing that to kind of make the point that a lot of our work with Working America is going to be for Pennsylvania, and a lot of it is going to be hopefully targeted to some of these swing House seats that are so important for us to hold the House. Okay. So all hands on deck, and I'm really happy to be working with people that have got so many hands that I can put my hands onto and with. And it really is great to be able to have this fellowship, if you will, to work together. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce Martha. Many of you know Martha, and as she well knows, our practice is not to give a long introduction, but she can tell us a bit more about herself as she also tells us about the other things that she's going to share with us. So over to you, Martha.
I didn't unmute myself before I went to my screen. So can everybody see my screen, SPAN screen? Okay, great. So, well, I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. You're one of my favorite groups to talk to. I have to tell you that I think you guys are winning the award right now. Every state party chair that's come and talked to your group is just like, that was so invigorating to meet all these people who care about what's happening in our countries. So I'm Martha Lanning. I used to be the chair of Wisconsin. I ended up starting this company called the State Party Advancement Network. and Stack Labs, which is here to help us build stronger state parties because I believe in them. I really appreciate how important and the value that all of you are seeing in the work that if we have a really strong state party that can support candidates all the way from school board up to the White House, it can make the difference in winning. So today I'm just going to tell you some of the great things that I know are happening in these states. So just to let repeat that the State Party Advancement Network, we advise donors, people who want to give money. We look at programming in the state parties, we find valuable programming, and then we follow up with the state parties. And if there's challenges that they're having, we help talk through those challenges and help them find ways to fix the problem. So right now, Pennsylvania, it is the first state I believe that you gave since working with SPAN, and Pennsylvania is doing great. And one of the things I just want to point out is if you had not donated, and some of our other donors at SPAN, they would just be getting started building their coordinated program right now. So they'd be hiring people and getting those people on the ground. But instead, they have 15 regional organizing directors on the ground who are leading really robust team of organizers. They have additional staff that are helping, and their focus has really been on building volunteers and building teams. And the way they've been doing that, house parties is one of the best ways, is they can get into a community, they can have somebody who's well known in that community, bring a whole bunch of people in. They just had 20 house parties this week alone, which was really exciting to see, because it seems, to those of you who haven't seen this model work, it seems like house parties. Why would we be doing house parties? But it's amazing because it creates this energy and this excitement, much like all of you create by being on these calls. And then it gets people excited to get engaged and learn how they can make a difference. So they have identified hundreds, I'm not going to give you the specific numbers, but hundreds and hundreds of potential volunteer team leaders. So as that energy grows, there can be more team leaders in other areas. And they're really focusing right now on reaching out and getting people registered to vote, because they have online registration or by mail. They started that actually not because of COVID, but they had a law that was passed that everybody can vote by mail. And so they're looking at everybody who's moved and being sure that they're getting them re-registering and focusing on that. So it's giving organizing power to those new teams to be doing that. And they're doing a great job. North Carolina is another one of the teams that you invested in. They have 7 RODs on the ground and are trying to hire 3 more. That's one thing that we've been noticing is our pool of organizing staff, maybe because of COVID, because we didn't have as many boots on the ground, where it's been more challenging to find organizers to come on as RODs, but North Carolina is working on that. They have 53 county captains signed up, which is outstanding. And they already are training those captains and those teams on tools. They actually have 76 out of their 100 counties signed up for Mobilize, which is a tool that easily people online can find out about ways to volunteer in the counties. So that's really great. And again, sharing the same thing, if it hadn't been for investment by SPAN donors and your investment, they would just be starting to hire people. And instead they have the staff on board that are doing so much work. I know one of my favorite stats from them is they've registered over 40,000 voters this cycle alone, which is really exciting. Michigan. Now, Michigan has had their program up and running for several years, since 2017. This is really one of the great states that can show you the power of keeping a year-round organizing program and building those teams all over your state, what it can do. They are actually their goal for this year is twice as many doors as they did in 2018. So by just having these volunteer teams and continuing to build on them and teaching them how to organize on their own and getting those wheels, those gears all spinning together, they have built quite a powerhouse. Matter of fact, the governor there turned to them to help her get her signatures, because they're like, can you help with this? And they got them done in no time, because they just put it out there to their teams and their teams took care of it. So since 2020's election, they've already identified over 100,000 unidentified voters. And for those of you who haven't been in the organizing political world a long time, we have a database that tells us all of the voters that are registered or that have voted recently. And if we know who they are, Democrat or Republican, that's noted in there. But if we don't, we call them unidentified. So Michigan's program has been hard at work. I know I talked to Lavore about a couple of weeks ago. She told me she had people signed up to do 7,000 doors that weekend. You would have never heard that ever happening, you know, in early March in a Midwest state until we started getting these organizing programs going. And so Georgia is the last state that I just wanted to chit chat with you a little bit about. And that is that Georgia is, again, a phenomenal state. I do agree with Jim and some of these things he's already shared with you. So I'm going to jump to the second part of it. But I do agree with Jim that Georgia has done remarkable organizing, and it's really been constituency based and voter protection based. And they have, you know, had some huge success last November with flipping all those seats. Now they just had a record breaking number of people, Democrats, qualify to run this year. So they're doing a great job. But they haven't, you know, they went from Stacey Abram got 5 staff members given to her in 2008 when she was, or 2018 when she was running at this time. So here, let's build a program and here's 5 people on our team to help you. Now they have 30. They have a full communications team that's been out there and putting out information. They have a constituency outreach team that's been working on it. They have a voter protection team and advisory board. It's amazing the resources they have. But they need a year-round organizing program. And that's what I'm really excited to hear, that you're all interested in helping with them. I do have a commitment from that state, that party, that if we build this, which they're building right now, that SPAN, as long as SPAN helps them raise the money, they will keep it going into the 2024 cycle. And that's music to our ears. So we're really excited about the work that they're doing. And I think I know that you have somebody from the Georgia Democratic Party here to talk with you. So I am just going to turn it over to him, but I'll stay on the call. So if you have any other questions for me later, I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Okay. So I believe Justin Pitts, who's the Director for Party Affairs, I believe is the title. I saw him here. So Justin, hopefully you're here and give us a few words about what this means for you.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Jim. And thank you for Martha. That was a fantastic lead in and pitch. I really appreciate that. And to everyone on this call, I cannot thank you enough for the support that you have given and that you continue to give the state of Georgia. A little bit of background about myself. I am a native Georgian myself. I grew up in Dublin, Georgia, graduated from the University of Georgia. I spent 13 years in New York City. And then in 2016, I had the chance to return to my home state to work to try to help turn it blue. So of course, that was the Hillary Clinton coordinated campaign in that year. You know, we experienced what we did in 2016, but we didn't give up and we kept working. We've, as Martha laid out so well, we have done some things in Georgia that I'm very, very proud of. The Democratic Party of Georgia, as far as I know, had one of the first full-time voter protection directors of any state party in the country. Thank you so much for that, Martha. So we're very, very proud of that. Unfortunately, y'all know that that was partially driven out of necessity. You have seen the Republican written bills that have come out of the Georgia state legislature. They have targeted primarily communities of color, primarily Black communities. And so voter protection is very, very important to us in Georgia. As Martha and Jim have laid out, I'm very, very proud of our candidate recruitment efforts and our attempts to organize across the state. So in my role as Director of Party Affairs, I primarily work with our county committees throughout the state. Georgia has 159 counties. That is the second highest number of counties in the country, right behind Texas. And so if you look at the size of Georgia and the number of Democrats and the potential there, it is a blessing and a challenge because we have a lot of good people throughout the state. We definitely have a big tent in Georgia, but it can be a challenge as I'm the only director of party affairs person on staff to reach those folks, to get them the voter education they need, to give them the voter protection support they need, and to get them to the polls. So again, we're in a really key spot in Georgia right now. We know that going local is what has broken turnout records in the past. As I'm sure several of y'all know, we have very, very red counties in Georgia. But by working on the margins and by working locally and by making those margins a little less red, that's how we flip the state for folks like Stacey Abrams for governor and make sure we send Raphael Warnock back to the Senate. So we are committed to year-round, on-the-ground, volunteer-led organizing. I love how Martha really framed it as a commitment, and our current chairperson, Congresswoman Nikema Williams, is 100% committed to year-round organizing. But what it's going to take to organize 159 counties in a very large state is additional capacity through these regional organizing directors, which is why we appreciate your support so much in being able to fund these regional organizing directors. If we were to have those regional organizing directors, that means we would broaden our reach geographically. It means we could increase the depth and efficacy with which we work with our constituency groups. I believe, as y'all know, Gwinnett County in Metro Atlanta, it is one of the most diverse counties in the entire country, and it is right in Metro Atlanta. And by giving us that additional organizing capacity with a regional organizer, y'all would help the quality and the efficacy of that constituency group outreach. We're committed to the snowflake model. We've worked very hard to train our county committees to have precinct captains or neighborhood captains or house district leads. And we've also found it to be very effective on college campuses as well. We have, of course, university system campuses throughout Georgia. So I just want to reiterate, I'm a little biased because I'm from Georgia originally, but y'all have seen that by flipping Georgia blue in 2020, that was what really secured the presidency. And by getting those 2 Senate seats, I have to speak personally now. I have been so inspired in the hearings for the Supreme Court justice. And I'm grateful that we sent 2 Democratic senators from Georgia to the U.S. Senate for these Supreme Court confirmation hearings. I want to make sure that we maintain that momentum. So Jim and the group, thank y'all so much for having me today. Thank you for helping the work we do in Georgia and across the country. Martha, thank you for your excellent presentation. And I'll be around for the rest of the meeting as well. Thank y'all.
Great, thank you, Justin. I believe Mary has a message for us, but Mary, do you want to go now or should we do Q&A or?
I'll go now.
Great.
So my name is Mary Pence. You all have heard from Jim and from Martha and from Justin how critically important Georgia is to the future of our democracy. And of course, Georgia's too far away for us to canvass. So what can we do? We can raise money. And we have scheduled a Zoom fundraiser for Georgia on April 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And the thing that we have really learned in the last 5 years, it's hard to believe, is the power of co-hosts. And when I talk about the power of co-hosts, of course, now I can't move on to, there it is. I love this picture. If you agree to be a co-host, like I see Harriet Henges on this call, she's agreed to be one of our co-hosts, and she is that drop of water dropping down into the middle of this pool. And radiating out from her are all these concentric circles. They are her relatives, her colleagues from work, her neighbors, the parents of her children's friends, people that she met through her book club, all those people who share her concern about our democracy are potentially part of the people, the group she'll invite to this fundraiser. And so Harriet, I want to thank you for being one of our first to be a co-host. And I want you to know that she is one of 21 people who have already agreed to co-host, and our goal is to have 50 co-hosts for this event. And with 50 co-hosts, each reaching out in those concentric circles, we will raise the $180,000 that we need to hire 3 regional organizing directors for Georgia. If you would be willing to be one of those co-hosts, please send me an email at marypence58@gmail.com. Now, if I were you, I would say, well, what's involved in being a co-host? It's really just 4 things. It's unbelievable simple. We give you the invitation. If you want to, you personalize it and you send it out to that network, all those concentric circles. 2 to 3 days before the event, you send out a reminder card. We provide that along with the invitation. On April 11th, you sign on to the call about 10 minutes early. And when you see your sister-in-law or your next door neighbor or your colleague from work sign on, you say, hey, James, so glad you could come, and make them feel welcome. And then after the event, you send out the thank you note that we provide, and you attach Jim Shelton's slides from the event so that everyone, whether they came or not, gets that amazing pack of slides that have so much content in them. So I want to key in on what to me is the most important thing about being a co-host, which it is incredibly rewarding. So please add to our group of 21 co-hosts, help us get up to 50. Send me an email at marypence58@gmail.com, and we will send you all the materials you need to help us reach our goal on April 11th. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Mary. And I believe now we have some time for a little Q&A. People have been leaving messages in the chat. I've been logging them. So I will go ahead and pose those, and I will just sort of lob them at the person that I feel is the most appropriate person to receive them. So my first question is for Jim. Somebody said in the chat, I didn't follow what you were saying about economic populism and people believing that price gouging is why our gas prices are rising, even though that's not true. How would Democrats use that in their messaging?
Great question. I mean, first of all, there's a general point about economic populism, and this is just one aspect. So the causes for the rise in the gas prices are actually pretty complex, right? A lot of it is increasing demand. A lot of it is because of supply chain problems. A lot of it is because of the war, right? And so forth. But the petroleum companies are making record profits. So there is some validity to that. There's a lot of profits being made on this. And it's just interesting that people do have a propensity to think that price gouging per se is the problem. It may not be the problem per se, but I do think there's a way we can use that belief to our advantage.
Great. Thank you. Okay, next question. I believe this would be good for Justin. Could Herschel Walker really beat Raphael Warnock?
Thank you so much for that question, Aaron, and to whoever asked it. Y'all know I have to immediately think of how I felt that night in November in 2016, when we all thought that there's no way that Trump could have won that presidency, and our worst nightmare that we thought could not possibly happen came true. So we have to treat him like a serious candidate. You know, we have to work as hard as we can, take nothing for granted, leave nothing on the table. And I will say, if y'all if you know any friends or family in Georgia, you'll know this, but the Bulldogs were the national football champions this year. Go Dogs! But folks remember Herschel Walker. They know him, they like him, and we as politically savvy folks know how dangerous his ideas are and how dangerous his associations are. But he still carries a lot of goodwill in Georgia. So gotta take it seriously and work hard and take nothing for granted.
Got it. Okay, we will. We're all in. Martha, I have some questions for you. So could you tell us about the Democratic Party of Georgia's commitment to fund support RODs through 2024? The questioner wasn't clear on it. And what are the prospects for getting matching funds for any funds we raise for Georgia?
So Scott Hogan, who is the executive director of Georgia, senior advisor and executive director, I talked to him right away to say, hey, if we do this, will you commit to carrying this over into 2024? And he said to me, with your support in funding that, absolutely. So the issue here is, as long as he can raise the money, he definitely wants to carry this program over. Which again, just a reminder, remember what Michigan was able to do, double the amount of voter contact with not double the amount of resources. So we would love to have that happen. So that was your first question. What was the second part? I'm sorry.
The second one was, please describe the Democratic Party of Georgia. Oh, let's see. What were the prospects of SPAN getting matching funds?
Matching funds. Yeah. So we right now, I have a donor who is talking to Georgia, and I am in the process of hiring. I just hired a fundraising consultant who is going to get me in front of more people. I would love to meet more grassroots groups like all of you, but and so I do believe that we will continue to raise. I just can't tell you right now I have a commitment from someone.
Okay, great. And while I have you, Martha, another questioner says, I believe Stacey Abrams has raised millions of dollars. Is any of that money available to your organization? If not, are they funding parallel operations?
So the way Georgia, well, here, I should probably leave this up to Georgia to talk about how they come together, but I'll just briefly say that when candidates come in, yes, they can take some of their money and they can put that money into, we call it table stakes, into building a program and a field program. Georgia is working alongside, they're combined with Stacey. They are not separate organizations. So yes, that money will support that too, but it's not at the same, I mean, Stacey has a lot of things that she has to pay for. And the one thing that I want to be sure of is, if you rely entirely on the candidate, when the election's over, then the money's gone, right? And so we want to be sure that we have like this, I always say, turn it down to a pilot light, like on a gas, stove, that when you're in the election, all burners are full flame, let's get going. But then we're going to just take it down to a pilot light so we can stay connected with those teams all over the state, so that we can turn it up if there's a special election, if there's anything that comes along. So I'm just trying to get there so that we don't pay for everything. It's very, very expensive, but we pay for the base that just keeps us alive and we can carry it on year after year.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Okay, I have a question for Justin. The questioner says, can Justin say more about how Georgia plans to create a year-round organizing effort to cover 159 counties? For example, how many RODs, regional organizing directors, do they need?
Thank you so much for that, Aaron. I know that the goal and the objective of our ask today is to fund 3 regional organizing directors. Again, every little bit helps. The more regional directors we have, the better. It seems in the past that 3 would be a good baseline number. As you all know, Metro Atlanta is its own beast and requires a lot of attention. But we are trying to organize statewide and making sure that we are turning out every vote in every locality that we can. In terms of thinking about the state geographically, we would hope that 3 would be a baseline for sure.
Okay, great. And then this question is, well, I will leave it to whoever thinks that they have the best answer for this. How critical is voter suppression in Georgia, and what can be done to protect voter access, or what more can be done?
That's for
Justin,
Justin.
you take that one.
I've loved your answers, Martha, and thank you so much. It is very critical in Georgia. One thing I was proud of during COVID lockdown is how Georgia Democrats and how the candidates really adapted to the new realities of COVID. Whether it was voting by mail or utilizing the drop boxes, I was really proud of our flexibility and ability to pivot. New legislation from the Republicans has basically made the drop boxes useless. There are all kinds of new restrictions on how they can be used. In addition, many, if not all of our counties now only have one drop box per county, and it must be located inside the Board of Elections office, and it's only accessible during business hours, which kind of negates the purpose of the Dropbox. All that is to say, it is a critical issue. We are doing our best to address it on multiple fronts. And what I mean by that is, one, we're trying to address it legally. We have lawyers in courtrooms fighting this bad legislation. Two is our communications team, by shining light on what has been done and how it affects our people. As you all know, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so we've been trying to address things with our communications team as well. But the reason why I'm here today is that organizing piece with these regional directors, because voter education really is critical, making sure our voters know what they can and what they cannot do, and trying to get them to vote early as possible, vote in person early if they're able. But again, just really relying on these organizers to directly contact our voters and educating them on what's going on.
Okay. And then, just while I have you, how do you decide when and where canvassers from out of state are appropriate versus when local people or paid to work long-term canvassers are more effective?
I can help with that one too, Justin, if you want to, because I deal with multiple states. So the out of state, it's really based upon that state, and it's based upon that state's area. So I will tell you that when Alabama was having their big Senate race, I was politely told by Alabama, please stop sending us Wisconsinites to make phone calls. It's not working. Like, it just hurts. We don't sound like them. It's not a good thing. So it really depends on the state, right? If you're talking about the difference between a paid canvasser, like a paid staff member versus I will always pick a community member over a paid canvasser. In today's world, if you went 5 years ago, I think, or 10 years ago, there were times where paid canvassers were better. But right now, politics is just very local, and being able to say, I live over the other street, or, hey, yeah, I remember when that shut down, that was terrible. Those are really important conversations. So we prefer to have local people, but having if we don't have enough local people, obviously paid canvassing is where we're going to go. If we can't get volunteers, and volunteers, as long as it's a good match, was not for Wisconsin to go to Alabama, then that's the way. So it's really depends on the situation. I guess it's not an easy answer on that one. One other thing, I did see this email, and I'm just going to shoot this in here. All of you should know that if you give out your personal email to someone, if you're sending something to saying, hey, let's get involved in this, that's fine, doing your personal email. But all of you, if you're really going to do a lot of this, should probably make up another email that's like your political email. And then all the junk can go to your political email, and you can just choose to go through that once in a while. If you're really savvy, tech savvy, you can put a rule in it to say that if it comes from this person, send it to my real email, but there's an in between there. So that's a protection. And never, ever, ever give out your cell phone number because you'll start getting calls to your cell phone number. And I shouldn't say never, ever. It's just be very careful with those things, because once it's out there, I have billionaires whose numbers have gotten out there, and there's nothing I can do to get it off the list for them. So just be careful.
Yeah, this is a question that comes up a lot. People say, oh, I donated and now I'm getting like all these emails. So I love the idea of like having a separate email that's just for political activity. And then Jim, I think too, people, if they donate by check, do they avoid some of this email problem? Is that another workaround?
Well, the party, these things are going to the party, and in my experience, the party is not all that aggressive. What happens for most of this stuff is when you donate to a candidate, and then the candidates share these things to other people. But you can with checks. We love checks, and we can work with people who want to do checks. And you can also ask that don't contact me if you're going to mail it. That can work.
Good. Okay. We have a few more questions. I know Michelle had something that she wanted to add. Jim, what are you thinking time-wise? Should we keep going with Q&A?
Let's go ahead and shift to Michelle. Again, thanks everybody for what you've gotten us at least $5,000 of where we were before. So that's moving us right along. Thank you.
That's great. Okay, and I've saved the questions we haven't yet gotten to. So we will get to them later, but I believe, Michelle, you wanted to make an announcement. So Michelle.
Yeah, hi everyone, good evening. Yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what 31st Street is doing with letter writing and phone banking through Working America. And as many of you have heard in prior meetings here, Working America is an AFL-CIO outreach to non-unionized working class people. And what they do is try to make connections with potential voters on issues that are of importance to them, such as health, accessible and affordable health care, dignity at work. And right now we have, I'm really pleased to say, about 50 31st Street members signed up to join our letter writing campaign, and about another dozen signed up to join phone banking through Working America. And while you do these things on your own time from your own home, we want to be able to build a sense of community and also answer your questions. So we've put together, Joe Esposito for the phone banking is doing an event on the 31st, I believe, where you can get support from fellow volunteers about phone calls. And I've put together with Working America a letter writing FAQ session this Wednesday evening at 5 o'clock. And it's still not too late to sign up to participate in both of these efforts. You can do that through our 31st Street website. We have something called a Smart Sheet sign up for all things Pennsylvania. And Aaron is going to put the link for that into the chat. And I really encourage you after this meeting tonight, if you want to do some field work from home, to go on to the Smart Sheet sign up, and you will hear from either Joe or me or somebody else on the team about how to do the letters and the phone calls. And I've already done the phone training and participated for about 30 minutes in the phone calls. This training was some of the best I've had. The phone calls are easy. You're not calling to ask for money. You're not calling about a candidate. You're asking to have a conversation. And while 11 of the 12 people I called weren't home, I had a great conversation with the 12th person who spoke to me about how hard she thinks it is to be a working mom. And we talked about that for a little bit, and she agreed to do some follow-up. So that was really positive. And then the letters are super easy. You print the letters out at home on your computer, and what you do is add 1 to 2 lines of your own personal narrative about why. In my case, I'm doing healthcare, why healthcare, affordable, accessible healthcare is important to me. And they give you the addresses, and you have about 3 weeks to do about 50 letters, which you can do with a buddy or on your own. So I hope to hear from more of you in the next week or so. Thank you.
So so letter writing is on Wednesday and phone banking is on Thursday.
Right, and that's an optional, time to join in a Zoom and meet other people doing the same thing and get your questions answered.
Great. Okay, Joanne, what is our next order of business?
Do we have time for more questions? I think there were a couple. If Justin's still here, there was a follow-up to the question about the ballot boxes. Justin still here?
Yes, I saw that in the chat. My non-official, I appreciate the question. I believe the question was, don't the drop boxes affect both sides? My personal stance on this, and not speaking for the state party, is central to our beliefs as Democrats and as Georgia Democrats is the importance of democracy. And we hold the right to vote as sacred, and we think it's very important to legally ensure that as many people can vote as possible. So I totally respect and appreciate the question, but what we have seen on the ground is, in 2020, when there was a global pandemic and we got these drop boxes to care about people's health, we ensured that as many people as possible could legally vote, and the result was we flipped the state blue. And as a result of Democrats winning the state, the Republican-controlled legislature made it harder for folks to vote. So I appreciate the sentiment in terms of doesn't it affect both sides, but we're just trying to ensure that as many people can legally vote as possible. And perhaps not coincidentally, when people's legal voting rights are not infringed, Democrats tend to do really well.
Funny that. Great. Okay, and I don't know if Martha is still here.
No, she had to leave. She's
leave.
oh, sorry.
Okay, great. I had a couple questions for her, but we will dispense with those. Justin, one more question for you. Someone asked, what is the snowflake model?
Sure, absolutely. Some folks also describe it as perhaps a hub or a wagon wheel, but it's a way of making organizing effective and more efficient. Whereas, if I'm the only staffer who has to deal with 159 counties, I'm not going to be as effective. But if y'all were to support us with 3 regional organizers, those 3 organizers can then be hubs for even more networks of organizers. So each organizer could have a portfolio of precinct captains and a portfolio of county committees. So just like a snowflake or a wagon wheel has a central hub that spreads outward, it's kind of like that in terms of thinking about how we can make our organizing more effective. Thank you for that.
Sure. Okay, I have a question here that I think might be good for Jim. The question is, for those interested in supporting down ballot races, is it important to support both state Democratic parties and PACs or 501c4 groups that prioritize certain affinity groups? What are we doing to stop the increase in Latino voters shifting to Republicans?
Right. Well, that's what I was referring to kind of in that menu. I mean, the other C3, C4 grassroots groups, we very diligently are looking for gems in Georgia and in North Carolina and in Pennsylvania. And it is a very important issue that we have lost working class folks of all racial groups, and we're losing them it definitely in the polls. So we really need to take that seriously in 2 ways. One, have messages that appeal to working class people across the board, but also do good grassroots groups work. So for example, in Pennsylvania, we're meeting this week with a group called Make the Road, which is a leading, hopefully gem Latino group in Pennsylvania. Right on.
Okay, great.
I saw one follow-up for Justin. We heard Martha Lanning's thoughts on out-of-state canvassers, and someone was asking, could we also hear yours?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate canvassers, and as y'all probably know, the data has shown that those in-person, live, real-time, person-to-person contacts are the most effective in terms of moving voters and getting them to vote. So canvassing in general, broadly speaking, is the most effective way to, even more effective than phone calls or texts. Canvassing and talking to somebody at their door is most effective. Now, in terms of out-of-state or neighbor or locals, like Martha said, having a local person from the community is the prime. That is the most effective way, especially if it's someone's neighbor or someone they know from the community. Barring that, though, we will take any canvassers. Yes, the ideal situation is to have somebody from the community, but my personal opinion, and I don't have data to back me up on this one, but it is better to have someone with an accent from out of state than not to have anyone at all, for sure.
That
We'll
makes
take
sense.
any canvassers.
Makes sense. Okay, Ginge, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I'm sorry, I tried to put it in the chat, but my chat isn't working. As a newcomer, my question is, how frequently do you have these fundraisers? I feel like I should go to one before I become a co-host and start sending them out to my friends. But is this one April 11th, the last one that's going to be here for a while? How often do you do it?
Mary?
So no, this is the second one of this year. And of course, it all depends on the focus that Jim Shelton sets out for us. But I think your idea, Ginge, of coming to one as a participant first makes sense. And then I'm just gonna, I can't tell you how many more we'll have. I don't want to preempt Jim Shelton's, I wouldn't dare preempt Jim Shelton's thinking. There will be more.
Yeah, there will be more, but I would encourage you to go ahead. Take the plunge. You got a lot of friends. You won't lose anything. You'll get in touch with people you haven't talked to in years. It'll be rewarding for you. So that's my.
It's true. My college roommate, people going way back. But Ginge, if you'll send me your email, I'll send you the invitation and I'll call them the instructions. It couldn't be easier. We do the work for you. And, let's say you invite, I'm just making this number up. Suppose you invite 25 people, and of those 25, 5 contribute and 10 attend. So you get a total of 15 responses. I'm completely making that up. That's incredible. There will be people who will contribute but not attend. Everyone who attends contributes, though. It's so inspiring. I shouldn't say, I'll say 99%. But I just think the information and the inspiration are compelling, and people see that this is a way to make a difference. So if you'll send me an email, I'll send you the stuff. Jim, good instincts, Jim.
And Ginge, somebody just directly chatted to me, but I think they meant this for you. The person said, I co-hosted without attending a fundraiser beforehand. This is out of my comfort zone, but it worked out well. I'd say go for it. It's actually, the fundraisers are sort of similar in structure, but a more condensed and focused version of what you just experienced at this meeting. So that might give you some idea. Ian Hellman says there may be recordings of previous fundraisers a new fundraiser could watch. And maybe we have those stored away somewhere on our website. Jim, is that possible?
Definitely, and there are also like segments of just certain presentations that are. It's on our website. If you go to resources and you look at the video library, you can see some of that.
Wonderful. And of course, our wonderful website is 31ststreet.org. I am going to go ahead and just put that and also the donation link into the chat one more time. But Joanne, do you have any parting words of wisdom before we start winding up?
You are putting me on the spot. I do not have parting words of wisdom, but I would like to thank everyone for coming out this Sunday afternoon. I really appreciated all of the questions and comments in the chat, because I hope you all realize that we really value your input. And it benefits all of us when you contribute your thoughts and your ideas. So I love that you're all persevering with me. I hope you'll continue to do so, and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.